You're listening to Potty Mouth Radio, the home of movies, music, television, and comedy.
And now, the hunt for the perfect album.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the hunt for the perfect album with Billy and Dave. And how you doing this week, mate?
I am good because we are talking about an absolute fucking banger.
Well, why don't you tell the people what it is you gave me this week?
We
are returning to the well.
We're returning to the Gizverse.
Yep.
And with... Oh, look, it's really weird. With so we are talking about Nonagon Infinity from King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, Australian prog psych rock balladeers. There is no kind of consensus as to their best album, as you would expect with a band that's got 26 odd albums to their credit that are so varied in genre. However, I think if you polled 100 King Gizzard fans what their top 3 albums were, everyone would have Nonagon Infinity in there. The other 2 would probably be different for every single person.
Yeah.
But everyone's going to have this one in there.
Interesting.
Almost all their stuff is, you could kind of say, is a concept album, but this one really is. As the name would suggest, there are 9 tracks, and it is designed so that each track seamlessly folds into the next, and then the last track seamlessly folds into the first, which really doesn't work when you're listening to it on vinyl. You need to flip that disc really fucking quick to kind of get the benefit of that. But on things like Spotify, obviously, if you put it on repeat, you can kind of feel that. But the idea is that each song stands on its own as a song, but it also forms this, larger than the sum of its parts. So I know you were a big fan of Flight B741, but you were a big fan of it because it was a 60s, 70s style blues rock album, which this very much is not. So,
But what this is a very good prog rock album. This feels much more like, say, Tool, who I'm a big fan of, whereas Flight B471 was very much
more
kind
of a
of
Lynyrd Skynyrd or thereabouts,
Yeah. So look, what I will say is I really liked this album. I would say that I liked this as much as the previous one you gave me.
Oh, wow. I did not expect that.
I really, really liked every track. What I will say, though, is that I don't think the concept is as well executed as I was hoping, and maybe my hopes were too high because they are a really kind of high concept band. But I guess the thing is, it's a no-brainer that I like every track, because if you like the first track on this album, you're going to like all of them, because there is not a huge amount of variation. There are some.
The second half, I think you get more. I think the first 3 or 4 tracks are very much
the first 3 tracks very
like
much
20-minute mini piece of. It's almost like a Mike Oldfield album where you've got side 1 is a single 25-minute piece, and side 2 is individual tracks.
Yeah, and I think that there are some track transitions that are better executed than others. There are some on here that I don't think you could say were written to transition. I think there are some where you can hear that it kind of just fades out and other stuff comes up. There is even one transition on here where the music literally does stop and then start again. It doesn't actually transition.
There are certainly a few where, and look, I don't want to second guess the guys in the band because they're more musically adept than I will ever be.
Yeah.
But there are some where it almost feels like they've just taken the first 10 seconds of the next track and added it onto the end of the first track.
Yes, or vice versa. Yeah.
You know what I mean? But that said, I think for me it does. If I close my eyes, I couldn't put my hand up and go, that's where a track changed.
Yeah. Yeah, so all in all, I liked this album. I liked every single track. Yeah, my only downside is that my expectations were too
So
high in
if I
terms
hadn't
of those
sold the
transitions.
concept to you and
Yeah.
just given you the album,
I would have liked it better.
there'd almost be
Yeah.
no negatives.
Yeah, if you hadn't, the only thing
talked
that
it
would
up
have
too much.
changed, the only thing that would have changed had you not told me is that I wouldn't have queued up the first track again at the end of the album to hear it transition back to the start.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I would have just listened to it.
I mean, in its defense, I do think one of the best transitions is from the last track to the first. I think.
Yeah, and the
what
problem with
feels
that
like
is that that's the one transition that most people will very rarely ever hear.
Because you kick off with this smack in the face.
Yeah.
And think, oh, it started on a really high note. And then when you get all the way to the end, you realize that high note was also a crescendo at the end of the album.
That's right,
I think that's very clever, more so than maybe some of the interstitials within the album.
Yeah.
Nonagon Infinity opens the door. Nonagon Infinity opens the door. Wait for the answer to open the door. Nonagon Infinity opens the door.
Yeah, we open with Robot Stop, which is a really high tempo, really good rock song. We're not even like really in the prog rock stage yet here. Like this isn't math rock or anything.
It's like a psychedelic prog rock.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've watched any of the film clips or anything, but there's like a similar to like Eiffel's. It's a weird comparison I'm drawing, but Eiffel 65's whatever the album is with Blue and all of that, where if you look at all the film clips, there's kind of a consistent story. All of the film clips for this have got them in, weird, wizard garb and face paint and standing around a Stonehenge type thing. It's all very mystical and 70s prog feeling.
Yeah. And I really dug that song. Like it's a good start to this album. It's up tempo. It's hard. And as I said, if you like that track, you're gonna like the entire first side of this album because there's not a lot of variation there. The first three songs are all the same tempo. They're all the same beat. The second one, we start to get a little bit more math rock in. We change our time signatures and stuff. But it certainly, when it kicks off, you're very much in the same vein as that opening track. I actually think that might be my favorite track on the album.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. I need to give the entire thing another listen, but particularly the end of this track where it really kind of builds. And I do like the transition from this track to track 3 the most on the album of all the transitions.
Because I do like Big Fig Wasp, but it's kind of, for me, it's always the one between Robot Stop and Gamma Knife.
Really? Yeah. I mean, Gamma Knife is also fantastic. And it's got a great riff at the head, which maybe is why I like, the build of Big Fig Wasp and how it kind of crescendos into that.
I think, I've got to say, because this album had been talked up to me, when I was first kind of checking out the band, and shout out to a friend of mine, Brent, because he's the guy that has been a fan of them for years and was on at me for at least 10 years since we used to work together, about, you need to check him out, and I was like, yeah, sure, whatever, silly name. This was kind of put on a platter of, this is the one that will kind of, everyone kind of puts on a pedestal. And the first few times I got sort of halfway through the album, it's like, it all sounds the fucking same. I like it, but it's not. There are other albums where there's discrete songs. And
And
It was-
honestly, I think that's fair criticism.
Well, it's not until I started to think of it in terms of, I mean, obviously I'm one of the world's biggest Mike Oldfield fans. He has a whole section of his career where every album, the first side is a single instrumental that's 20-something minutes long. Side 2, a whole bunch of discrete songs with vocals. And when I started to think of it in terms of that, even though they are discrete songs,
Yeah.
that's when it kind of gelled for me. It's like side 1, it is. I don't think of it as just individual tracks. Really, it's
Yeah.
one big long thing that goes for 20-something minutes, and
Yeah.
then in side 2, you've got genuine differentiation. All the songs are really noticeably different.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess, as I said, my only downside was really on me, and it was my expectations. I was hoping for some real differences, some maybe even the instrumentation being tossed around a bit. Like, my favorite transition between two tracks on an album is on Blink-182's self-titled album that I gave you, where we transition from Easy Target into... what's the song called that Robert Smith guest sings on?
Oh,
and
the one that I said, oh, it sounds a little bit Curie. No wonder you like it.
yeah. And it's the same riff, but we go from a really heavy punk song into like this quite slow Robert Smith led ballad, and the way it transitions into that, I really, and I guess I was hoping for more of that kind of thing.
I think
what we got instead is a
side two,
fantastic fucking prog rock album. But
side 2, I think you get more of that because the songs are more different.
Yeah,
Like
a
side
bit.
1, I get.
But side two is also where we get the one transition I was talking about, where we don't transition, we just stop and start again. People Vultures is probably my least favorite on the album, only because
weird.
it is so similar to Gamma Knife. It really doesn't feel like its own song to me. Can I take a guess though? Is Mr. Beat the first track of side 2?
Excuse me while I investigate this. Of course, you smart-ass pricks, you don't put a fucking track listing on the bloody album. Really leaning into the...
Let me Google it.
This is just zero indication on the freaking thing at all. Just while you're doing that, I do not own their entire discography by any stretch of the imagination, but it's their output is fucking mental.
Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you. I kind of want to say it's Evil Death Roll's the start of side 2, but I might be wrong.
That would surprise me. And
Just
this
because
is
it's a longer track, so I would have thought you'd have like 5 and 4 with the long track on side 2, but I might be mistaken.
Yeah, no. So yes. So side B starts with Mr. Beat.
Wow.
And that doesn't surprise me at all. Mr. Beat is the first one that's a different tempo.
It makes sense musically because the first 4 are very, very similar, and 5 through 9 are all distinct and different. So it totally makes sense.
And look, maybe I'm remembering wrong, but my memory of this transition is it's the first one where I don't believe it was written as a transition. My memory is that you can fully hear People Vultures fade out, and underneath it you get a brand new drum beat coming up. And I'm going to play the transition.
Check it out.
Just
You're doing
to
it
hear
through Spotify. Let's hear it.
Yeah, I'm going to play it because I'm curious to hear, because I do think that it makes sense then that that's side B, so that most of your hardcore kind of audience aren't going to hear the transition. So let's. know what? I'm not giving it enough credit. That's a better transition than I remember.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously a.
But actually,
But if you look at where the track change is, from memory, it's
the track
not,
changes. No, yeah.
It's later, and I think that's a little bit convenient and go like, we'll have the track change a little bit later. But I think when you listen to it like that, I think it still it feels like a movement change within a symphony rather than.
Okay, yeah.
I do love this song.
Yeah, I do like this song as well. Yeah. Like I said, I liked every single song on this album. I don't think there's a bad song. People Vultures is probably my least favorite, but it's still not a bad song by any stretch.
And there is instrumentally, while there is, I mean, given the nature of the album, obviously, there is a certain sameness to sounds. I don't mean this in a negative way, but there is a certain sameness to it because of the kind of the conceit of this concept. But there's weird, like Robot Stop has like bluegrass harmonica in there, which is weird, totally weird for an album of this genre.
Yeah.
You do have weird, there's the things they do with the guitars in this. There's some weird sounding guitar, they could even track to track, the guitar sounds change. And I mean, they've got custom built instruments and everything. So I guess that's part of it. But once you sort of listen a few hundred times like I have, there's some very unusual instrumentation happening, which even things I can't even identify what the instrument is.
Yeah. Actually, maybe that's my favorite track. As I said, I really liked the whole album. There's not a bad track on it.
I love Robot Stop and Gamma Knife, but I think side 2, I think I like more than side 1, just because you do get more variation every time you move from Evil Death Roll to Invisible Face to Wah Wah. It's like, there's a real defined identity for each of the songs.
There is much more on side 2. Yeah. I think I came in too early there because my memory is that this song even has a transition inside the song where it changes to very different instrumentation and tempo and everything halfway through this song. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, all in all, I'm a big fan of this album. There's nothing bad on it. As I said, my only issue was my own expectations around the concept of it.
I talked up the gimmick quite a lot. In hindsight, I should have just gone, here's a cool album. But I am glad I did not expect you to like it as much as Flight B741.
I mean, honestly, possibly even more. I need to give this more listens. But this has definitely convinced me to, as overwhelming as it is, to dig into more of their discography.
All right. Well, look, let me just, and for the listeners, I was going to just message you this, but for the listeners' sake, I will do a very quick 3-second précis just to give people. Okay, so B741 as you would expect for this band, was not the only album they released last year.
Yeah.
They also released The Silver Chord, which I
Yep.
would highly recommend, where B741 and most of their albums are guitar heavy. Just for funsies with Silver Chord, they went, nah, fuck it, we're all synth driven. So
Right.
the entire album is kind of a synth album. So it's notable for that reason. Flight B741, obviously we have covered. Highly recommended. It's awesome. 60s, 70s blues sort of thing. If you listeners just want to check out, get it kind of the closest thing to a best of, and it's not a best of because it's original stuff, but if you want to see which of their styles you like, the appropriately named Omnium Gatherium, which
Okay.
is a double album.
That might be what I dig into next then.
Omnium Gatherium is a collection of B-sides and things, so it covers all of the genres. So there's there's thrash metal, there's prog, there's everything in there, and so you'll be able to pick and choose. If you really like the lighter side of things, Butterfly 3000 is almost a kind of a poppy album.
Right.
Skipping through, the one that I was going to give you, which might be my favourite, is Flying Microtonal Banana. This is
You've mentioned that, yeah.
That is so that their kind of experiments with microtonal music culminated really in that album, which is completely microtonal. That's with all the custom built instruments and everything. That's probably my second favourite of theirs. My favourite, which I don't think I've got here, is an album called Polygon Dwanaland, which is probably my personal favourite. But I would say those are a good selection to check out.
Yeah, nice.
If you love full-on thrash metal, then an album called Infest the Rat's Nest, which I don't own because I don't love full-on thrash metal. But if that's the kind of if that's your particular brand of vodka, it's kind of scary.
Nice.
Not my cup of tea, but a lot of people love it.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah, no, I'm a big fan. Honestly, I'm a 9 out of 10 on this album. There's nothing bad here. There's no tracks to skip. I mean, there might be times where the mood struck you to skip a song halfway through because some
It's
of
a
them
little
are
bit
long.
I mean, as you said, it's a bit of a cheat code for this show,
But
because if you're not looking at the screen, it's hard to skip tracks because you don't know when it changes.
yeah.
But no, I'm really pleased that you like it and you're
big fan.
inspired to delve deeper into the Gizverse.
I am. Yeah, big time. Yeah. Yeah,
Excellent.
this one, I mean, like, I loved B741, but you had already kind of let me know that, their style is so varied. That's not what other albums were like. So I was like, okay. But this one has convinced me that, yeah, these guys are just fucking great.
While Omnium Gatherium is a great... I really want you to check out Silver Chord next because it's
Okay.
because it's a synth album and it was the same year as B741. I think I'm really interested to hear your thoughts on that, knowing it was done, literally almost at the same time as a 60s, 70s blues rock album.
Nice. Well, I'm going to give you something really different next week. I am going to just go with my heart and give you some full-on, very early 2000s pop punk.
Okay.
A band called Eve 6, their album Horoscope. And look, I know that you like the more kind of pop punky side of Blink-182. You didn't love the album of theirs that I gave you. You didn't love Boxcar Racer because it was a bit more kind of
very mediocre
so
indeed.
I am just going full on pop punk.
right.
So I'm curious to hear if you like it. It's
I've
don't know.
never heard of
yeah.
Eve 6. I've never heard of Eve 6, so
All right.
Sure.
Well, I'm curious to see. All right. And in the meantime, if you want to get in touch with us, you can do that at pottymouthradio.com or pottymouthradio@gmail.com. Go and join the Facebook listener community. You can go over to Patreon and get access to future episodes of this show, bonus episodes,
If you're
video
not a patron,
content.
we are speaking to you from the distant past.
That's right. And I'm going to play us out with Road Train because
Do it.
why not?